There is a kind of fascinating appeal to this theory. It gives those who expound it an aura of intellectualism, the appearance of being able to grasp a complex economic principle that is beyond the comprehension of mere mortals. And, for the less academically minded, it offers the comfort of at least sounding moderate. After all, what's wrong with a little debt, prudently used and intelligently managed? The answer is nothing, provided the debt is based on an honest transaction. There is plenty wrong with it if it is based upon fraud. An honest transaction is one in which a borrower pays an agreed-upon sum in return for the temporary use of a lender's asset. That asset could be anything of tangible value. If it were an automobile, for example, then the borrower would pay rent. If it is money, then the rent is called interest. Either way, the concept is the same. When we go to a lender, either a bank or a private party, and receive a loan of money, we are willing to pay interest on the loan in recognition of the fact that the money we are borrowing is an asset which we want to use. It seems only fair to pay a rental fee for that asset to the person who owns it. It is not easy to acquire an automobile, and it is not easy to acquire money, real money. That is, if the money we are borrowing was earned by someone's labor and talent, they are fully entitled to receive interest on it. But what are we to think of money that is created by the mere stroke of a pen or the click of a computer key? Why should anyone collect a rental fee on that? The central banks tell us that money is like any other commodity and that its price is determined by the law of supply and demand. According to this view, when a bank makes a loan, it is simply lending money, a commodity in which it has a saleable surplus. But where does the money come from? How can the bank sell anything that it does not have? The truth is that no one knows. No one could possibly know how much money there is at any given time, because it is not a physical thing that can be counted. Money is numbers in the books of a few thousand commercial banks. These numbers can be multiplied almost infinitely with every turn of an electronic switch. If there is any limit to the process, it is set neither by the banks nor by the government. It is limited only by people's willingness to accept the resulting claims on future production as a medium of exchange. In other words, money is not a commodity. It is a claim on future production which can be issued in any amount desired by anyone who can acquire the necessary bookkeeping assets. Under these circumstances, it is difficult to understand how anyone can regard the collection of interest on such claims as anything other than plain robbery. Now, despite our best efforts to the contrary, human beings are not infallible. They make mistakes, and sometimes those mistakes are costly. What is more, unforeseen events can take place that no amount of care or prudence could have guarded against. It is only right that individuals should be held responsible for their own errors and those of their business associates. But when the government guarantees loans made by commercial banks and pays the interest on those loans out of tax revenues collected from citizens, it is no longer a matter of individual error and responsibility. It becomes a matter of collective guilt and punishment. If the government is going to assume the risk of an individual borrower defaulting on his loan, it ought also to assume the risk of the borrower absconding with the loan proceeds or investing them in a worthless venture. Otherwise, we have simply shifted the incidence of risk without reducing the amount of risk. The banks still need security for the loans they make, just as they did before. But now they are able to get that security not out of the pockets of the borrowers or their own, but out of the pockets of taxpayers. This means that entrepreneurs are freed from having to provide equity capital from their own savings or attract investors willing to accept the risks of the venture. Instead, they can borrow all the money they want from taxpayers, repay the loans with interest, and still keep the profits. But this cannot go on forever. The equity which must sooner or later be provided will equal the amount of profit earned during the period of subsidized credit creation. Who is to say that this will not happen within a few years, or even months? Suddenly, the entrepreneur finds himself holding claims on future production that have lost most or all of their value. Equity that once seemed substantial has vanished. All that is left are debts that still must be paid. The taxpayer turns out to have been right to worry after all. In a world of honest transactions, an entrepreneur who finds himself unable to pay his debts is a financial dead man walking. His creditors will take over his assets and use them to pay themselves. The end of his financial world will be swift and relatively painless. He will be free to start again with a clean slate. But in our modern world of dishonest transactions, such an entrepreneur is financially dead. Yet society keeps him alive by forcing taxpayers to continue paying the interest on his loans indefinitely. In many cases, it would be cheaper for society simply to pay off the entire debt and let the entrepreneur keep the difference. At least then, the taxpayers would be getting something for their pains. But our leaders have been so taken in by the fraudulent fiction that there is no limit to debt, that they force taxpayers to do the bank's bidding and keep alive failed borrowers who are incapable of earning enough to pay the interest on their loans. And all the while, the bankers, politicians, and academics smile and congratulate themselves on being so progressive.